In April of 1841, something happened in South Carolina that stunned even the most ruthless plantation owners. Silas Rutledge, owner of Cypress Grove Plantation, publicly declared that his 28-year-old daughter, Catherine, would be placed under the full authority of an enslaved man named Ezekiel Cross. Not as a servant, not as a caretaker, but as her master in everything except legal paperwork. In a society obsessed with racial hierarchy and control, this was unthinkable. The elite families of Colleton County were horrified, but none of them understood what Silas was really doing, and none of them could have imagined what would unfold before the year ended. By November, 13 prominent men were dead. Cypress Grove was reduced to ash, and whispers spread across the Lowcountry of a reckoning that no one dared investigate too closely. So what really happened? Let's go back to the beginning. Spring in coastal South Carolina was suffocating. The Combahee River moved slowly beneath curtains of Spanish moss. Rice fields stretched endlessly, worked from dawn to dusk by enslaved men and women whose labor built fortunes for others. Cypress Grove sat on 800 acres, respectable but not elite. Silas Rutledge owned 58 enslaved people. Wealthy, yes. Powerful? Not quite enough. He desperately wanted more. More status, more influence, more control. His wife had died giving birth to their daughter, Catherine, in 1813. For 28 years, he raised her alone, if raising is the right word. Catherine grew up isolated, educated by tutors, never truly welcomed into society. By adulthood, she was labeled unstable. Doctors diagnosed her with hysteria. They prescribed heavy doses of laudanum and mercury-based treatments. Her body swelled, her hands trembled, her speech slurred. But what society called madness had a cause. At age 12, Catherine had seen something in the cellar of her home that no child should ever witness. Something her father spent the next 16 years trying to erase from her mind. Silas was part of a secret society known as the Brethren of the Harvest. 13 influential men, judges, clergy, bankers, plantation owners. They believed prosperity came through ritual sacrifice, blood spilled to strengthen the land. They recorded everything in a hidden ledger, every gathering, every victim, every participant. When Silas fell deep into debt, nearly $12,000, the brethren offered him a bargain: publicly humiliate himself, prove his loyalty, place his daughter under the authority of an enslaved man for 1 year. In exchange, his debt would disappear. And so, Ezekiel Cross was brought to Cypress Grove. Ezekiel was not random. He had been carefully selected. Tall, quiet, skilled in herbal medicine. But beneath his calm exterior burned something far more dangerous. Silas had once owned Ezekiel's wife and children. He had sold them, deliberately splitting the family to prove his resolve to the brethren. They died within 18 months. Ezekiel had spent years maneuvering through sales and transfers to get here. Cypress Grove was not coincidence. It was destination. When Ezekiel first entered Catherine's darkened room, she expected another tormentor. Instead, he opened the curtains. He asked when she last went outside, when she last ate without medication. Then he said something no one had ever dared say. What if you're not mad? What if you're being kept that way? The idea shattered something inside her. Together, they began undoing 16 years of chemical dependency. He weaned her off laudanum, used herbal remedies to cleanse her system, forced her to walk, to read, to think clearly again. And when her mind returned, so did her memory. The cellar, the altar, the rituals, the woman sacrificed before her eyes when she was 12, and her father drinking from a goblet as if it were holy. Catherine had documented everything in coded journals. Dates, names, visitors. She knew where the brethren kept their ledger, in a hidden chamber beneath the cellar. When Silas left for Charleston in mid-May, she and Ezekiel descended into that darkness. They found it, a massive book detailing 40 years of ritual killings, 37 confirmed victims, maybe more, systematic, recorded like business transactions. They began copying pages, but Silas had anticipated them. He returned early. He caught them in the chamber, and that night the brethren assembled. Silas offered Ezekiel a choice. Join them, participate in the rituals. In exchange, he would be given resources to hunt down the Alabama planter responsible for working his family to death. Or refuse, and both he and Catherine would die. Ezekiel agreed, but only if Catherine was sent away safely. Silas accepted. Catherine was placed in a carriage at dawn, but she never went north. Instead, she vanished into the slave quarters, and for 3 weeks she prepared. On the night of Ezekiel's initiation, 13 men gathered in robes beneath the plantation. A young enslaved woman was bound to the altar. Ezekiel was handed the knife. "Make the first cut," Silas commanded. He stepped forward, raised the blade, and turned. The knife plunged into the throat of the nearest brethren member. Chaos exploded. Candles shattered. Blood sprayed. Ezekiel fought like a man who had nothing left to lose. And then, footsteps thundered down the cellar stairs. Catherine had returned. Not alone. 23 enslaved men and women followed her, armed with tools, axes, scythes. They had waited for this moment for years. The brethren had ruled through terror. Now terror turned on them. Judge Pelham fell first. Reverend Crenshaw begged. No one listened. Silas tried to take Catherine hostage. She told him to kill her. He hesitated. Ezekiel did not. When it ended, 13 powerful men lay dead in the cellar they believed made them untouchable. At dawn, Cypress Grove burned. The ledger was placed in the center of the altar and set aflame. No evidence, no witnesses, just a tragic accident. That was the official story. Silas Rutledge and 12 prominent citizens died in a cellar fire. Catherine perished too, they said, the mad daughter. Ezekiel was supposedly sold, but no transaction record exists. Years later, rumors spread of a network helping enslaved people escape north, led by a quiet man who had once destroyed something dark in South Carolina. In 1971, a coded journal was discovered in a wall during demolition. Before it could be fully decoded, it vanished from county archives. Some believe descendants destroyed it.
Others believe it still exists, waiting.
What we know for certain, 13 influential men died in 1841. Cypress Grove burned, and stories survived, passed quietly through generations about the night power collapsed. Maybe it's legend. Maybe it's history buried on purpose. But one thing is undeniable. Cruelty builds empires, and sometimes it also builds the fire that destroys them. If you enjoyed this dark historical mystery, subscribe to the channel. Comment your state below. And tell me, do you believe the ledger still exists, or was it destroyed forever? See you in the next story.